Critter Trades here, and today I'm going to be talking about the reliability of the CVT transmission, specifically for Subaru, and I'm going to touch on a couple other brands as well, and if I think they're reliable or not, and if I recommend getting a manual transmission over the CVT, and which one might be better for you to pick. Now, let me start this with the original CVT that caused all of the problems with the reliability concerns, and that's the Nissan CVT. They were known to have complete transmission failures with their CVTs, and it was a very common problem with those vehicles. And it kind of scared a lot of consumers away from the CVT transmission when they were looking up things about CVTs. They kept seeing these massive amounts of people who were having total transmission failures and replacements early on in the lifespan of the vehicle. A lot of them were under 100,000 miles, and some were having even multiple CVTs that were failing after they replaced them already. And what this did was it kind of tarnished the CVT's reputation. And it really has stuck with the CVT for a long time, and it still has this stigma around it as well today. And I'm here to tell you about why that is in the past, and also that is specifically with Nissan. A lot of the other makers, Subaru, Honda, and Toyota, I know, make some very good CVT transmissions. They're very reliable, and there are a few different things that you need to look out for because the Subaru one specifically does have a little problem. And the problem is a specific solenoid in the valve body of the CVT. It's known to prematurely fail. If you're experiencing these solenoid issues, what will happen is you'll get a lot of dash lights and you'll get some codes thrown up, and you'll need to take it to the dealer for them to figure out what's wrong. And the culprit is that it's a solenoid in the valve body. And the fix for it is to replace the valve body itself. Now, this may seem like a pretty big issue, but it really isn't, and here's why. So, Subaru has covered the CVT problems, any problems, not just the valve body, but any CVT problems up to 10 years or 100,000 miles. And if you actually contact Subaru of America, they've been known to cover, and I've seen a lot of cases of this, where they cover it up to 150,000 miles and unlimited mileage through the PSEV warranty. And I've seen a lot of people get their valve bodies replaced for free up to 150,000 miles or even more than that. So if you are having issues with your valve body, take it to the dealer, let them figure out what it is, and then call Subaru of America. They're going to at least, at minimum, give you a percentage back on the price. I've heard people getting $1,000 back on a $1,200 repair and replacement for the valve body. And now if you're comparing this to a manual transmission, the valve body seems to go out between 100 and 150,000, give or take. Obviously, there's going to be some that go less than that and some that go over that. If you compare that to a manual transmission with a clutch is almost exactly the same price as the valve body. It's going to be $1,200, $1,500, $2,000 to get a new clutch on a manual transmission Subaru. And that's exactly the same price, or it might even be a little bit cheaper to get a new valve body installed. And the other thing about the valve body is it sits up on top of the transmission on the Impreza and the Crosstrek, and you can actually replace it yourself fairly easily because it does sit up on top of the engine. You don't need to take the whole transmission out to do that service. So if you're looking at the reliability compared to a manual and a CVT will have a pretty similar repair bill at the same price. The only big difference is that with the CVT, Subaru covers it if you're under 150,000 miles. And so if you look at it in that way, there really isn't much difference in reliability in terms of the manual versus the CVT. And total transmission failures for the CVT and the manual are actually extremely rare. It's almost always the valve body, and the problems with the manual is that the clutch wears out, which is just a wear item. So if you're looking at it in terms of reliability, they're very similar in terms of reliability. So I don't think you can go wrong with either one. I will say though that the Subaru CVT has really impressed me a lot. I was a little skeptical at first, especially hearing about CVT issues. And the CVT for a daily driver is probably the best transmission out there. I would prefer it over any automatic transmission I've ever used. Of course, it's going to be less fun, less engaging than a manual. For a daily driver that you're not racing or anything, it's a really awesome transmission. It's super smooth, it gives you the power when you need it, it can sit at peak horsepower. So again, I really like the Subaru CVT. There are some known issues that, again, mostly are covered by Subaru, or that aren't much different in price than a clutch swap on a manual. So if you hear about the CVT being a really unreliable transmission, it simply isn't true if you're talking about the Subaru, Honda, Toyota CVTs. They're very good transmissions, and I've had mine 115,000 miles. It's 10 years old. I haven't changed the fluid once. I haven't had any issues with it. I've heard of people going 250,000 before they have valve body issues.
There's a few people who have gone up to 500,000, and I think there's somebody who even hit 1,000,000 miles on one of these cars. So they're not unreliable like a lot of people say they are.